Hey guys, Yips here coming out with another video, and this one's going to be about the Affliction, Destro, Demonology changes that are happening in the current 7.1.5 PTR build. I think the changes that they made were relatively good overall. I think the Destro changes are okay, but don't really make sense, and I'll get into that more when I go over the talents. So I'm just going to jump right into the talents because all of these things here can be talked about on the talent calculator. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was the Affliction talents. I think the Affliction changes made were really, really good, really, really strong, and made a lot of sense going into patch 7.1.5. So right now, when you close your eyes and think about Affliction Warlock and say, okay, what is Affliction Warlock really, really struggling right now with? It's struggling with priority add target switching. If an ad spawns and it only lasts for 10 to 15 seconds, Affliction has a very, very, very hard time doing any sort of burst damage to that target because all you're able to do is cast a few UAs, but by the time you get those out, the target's already dead. So we're going to look at the talents here and sort of what they did to change that. So looking at the first talent that we have here, it is Haunt. And the change that they made to Haunt is now when you press it, your shadow damage increases damage dealt to the target by 10% for 15 seconds. Basically what this does is it makes it a much more viable single target ability to run because it increases your shadow damage by 10%, but not only that, it's going to be very, very, very powerful to run on ad switching. So imagine a situation where an ad spawns, you're able to haunt it, put a few UAs into it, it dies, you get the haunt back, you get the soul shards back, and then you're able to, transfer that damage to the boss so you don't lose out on any value. I think this is going to be a great target to run on a boss like Elganoth, probably some bosses in Nighthold. I might even run it in Mythic Helya once this build comes out. So I think this is a very, very, very fun, very, very good iteration of Haunt. I really like the change really quickly. I think it's great for priority target switching. I think that the buff to it for single target was really, really good because then it also makes it a good single target ability. Just love it. Just love it. The next thing that I want to talk about was Malefic Grasp. This is also one of the change talents. When channeling Drain Soul, your damage over time effects deal 20% increased damage to the target. I think that this is an okay change. I think that this talent that they put in the game is okay. I don't think it's going to take over Writhe and Agony. Obviously, this is a single target talent. I don't think it's going to be better than Writhe and Agony for single target. A Writhe and Agony Soul Effigy build just benefits double the amount from Writhe and Agony than it would from Malefic Grasp. But at the same time, if you wanted to run a build like Soul Conduit, I think Malefic Grasp might take over as the #1 talent slot for running a Soul Conduit single target build. And that's great for some warlocks that don't want to run Writhe and Agony, and they do want to run Malefic Grasp, and they don't want to run that Soul Effigy build that some warlocks find really, really annoying to play. Malefic Grasp will be a great, great, great choice for them, as it will just increase your damage over time effects by 20% on the target when you're able to sit there and channel that. I think the channeling part will be kind of clunky sometimes because you're going to want to be bursting with UAs, but then you're going to have to move. You're not going to be able to get that channel off. But overall, if you're able to maintain high Drain Soul uptime and you're able to get a lot of usage out of this target or ability, I think it'll be nice for warlocks that really want to play it because a lot of warlocks have been complaining and really, really wanted to see this, ability active. So yeah, they implemented it into the game. They put it at a decent iteration. I don't think it'll surpass Wrath and Agony, but running a Soul Conduit build, I think it will be pretty good. Moving on to the next tier, it's going to be Contagion, Absolute Corruption. They remain the same, but they add a new ability called Empowered Life Tap. Basically, Empowered Life Tap is going to take over Contagion with regards to how powerful of a single target thing it will be. Basically, it's like Contagion except better. It's 12% increased damage for 15 seconds that you can apply every single time you life tap. It will give you mana back, but not only that, it will just also increase your damage. So it's just going to be a better single target build than Contagion. I don't see why. I think Contagion should be the best single target option for Warlocks, but they're making it so Empowered Life Tap is going to be the best single target talent for Warlocks by a landslide. I don't see why they would implement a talent like this when they want to make talents that are, you have a choice, but basically it's going to be, okay, single target, Empowered Life Tap. More than 3 targets, Absolute Corruption. Done, right? It doesn't make sense. Why would you make this ability so powerful? I think that they should buff Contagion back to 15%, and maybe it will be competitive with Empowered Life Tap. That's my opinion on these talents. So those were the changes made to Affliction. I will touch on the Soul Harvest maybe when I get to a later spec, but basically all they did was they increased the duration. So I think this will be very powerful when you can get a few agonies out and really get like, a 25-30 second duration Soul Harvest on a target or during an encounter. So I think the Soul Harvest change was good. Not much to say. Increased duration, made it better. That's good. The next talent, next thing I want to talk about was Destruction. So with Destruction, the kind of messed up here. They messed up by making these decent changes without buffing Destro's single target. That doesn't make any sense. Why would you make changes to a class that had poor single target and then nerf their single target by making talent changes but then not buff it with spell damage increase? It doesn't make any sense. So I'll go into more depth why it doesn't make sense. What they did was they changed Eradication with Cataclysm. So before, basically every Warlock for single target would run Reverse Entropy and Eradication, and it would buff their single target damage a lot. Now what they did was they put these two on the same tier, and the reason that they did that makes a lot of sense. They did it so you have to now choose between Reverse Entropy and Eradication. Okay? And they made it so they want to choose between Fire and Brimstone and Cataclysm for AoE. That makes sense. That makes sense. Make them have choice. That's what they wanted to do with the talent system. They wanted to make so people had to choose, not just run the same thing every single time. However, Destro's already doing so poor single target without matching this with some sort of buff. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make sense why you would do this. It's just going to make a lot of people upset because they're already so poor at single target. You're just nerfing it even further. It's just changes that don't make sense. And I really think that they should reflect this with some sort of buff single target. I'm not sure what that would be, but I really think that they need to rework Havoc in a way that it doesn't, ruin Destro's potential to do single target damage. So that's my opinion on the change. I think it doesn't make sense. I think it makes sense in regard for the talents, but I don't think it makes sense with regard to how Destro is currently performing. The next change that I wanted to talk about was Shadowburn. They changed Shadowburn to be 2% of base mana, have a 12-second cooldown, and blast the target for damage, and generate a soul shard if it dies within 5 seconds. Why don't they just make this talent baseline? I don't get it. I don't understand why they don't just make Destro Shadowburn baseline. It would just, improve the quality of life. It wouldn't be, something that it would be abused in any way whatsoever. It wouldn't be a huge damage increase for Destro Warlocks. It doesn't make sense why they just don't make this baseline, 15-second cooldown, something along those lines, and deal decent damage. Makes no sense at all. Maybe just make it so it's only usable when the target is below 20% health. That's the only thing I could, say about it. I don't understand why they're making this a talent still. Just make it baseline, Blizzard, please. Would make a lot of sense. The last change is to be channeled Doomfire. Basically what it does now is instead of just, launching Fellfire bolts that only hit one target, it's going to hit a target and then it will explode, dealing half the amount of damage on the explosion. So basically just a buff for the AoE of Demon Fire. Before it was only a single target spell, now it will be more of an AoE spell. I'm unsure how well it will perform with AoE. I think it's still a bit of a hassle ability. I don't think people really like running Channel Doomfire, so I still don't think it will see much play. Maybe if it's super overpowered in this iteration, it will see a lot of play, but overall, I don't think it's a good enough talent to overcome Soul Conduit or Wreak Havoc, because they're just both so good. So, that's my opinion on Destro Lock changes. The changes make sense, but they're not good because it nerfs Destro single target, which is already awful at. So why would you ever do that? Now going on to the Demonology talent changes. The Demonology talent changes are good because it buffs Demonology mobility, but it's bad because it doesn't do it in the best way possible, and also they nerfed Demon Bolt damage for single target, so let's just go into those changes. So Impending Doom. Doom deals 3 damage 3 seconds faster, and it summons 1 wild imp when it deals damage. Power Trip, Demonic Empowerment has a 65% chance to generate 1 soul shard when used in combat. So this is a direct buff to Demonology Warlock movement, and it's also a slight buff AoE because a lot of Demologs have been using Impending Doom for AoE. Basically what it does is it says, okay, on a fight, single target now, you can now use Doom as a filler spell for movement, so you can cast Doom and then move during that GCD way more often, and your Doom is no longer going to be applied by Hand of Doom because they buff Power Trip, just making it that much more, usable. So I think it's a good change because it buffs Demonology movement in the right way. It makes it so you're relying on Doom for a lot more globals of your movement, because let's be real here, if your Doom is taking 3 seconds faster, you're going to be using Doom a whole heck of a lot more during the boss encounter, and basically it's going to account for like 10% of your globals or something like that, so you're going to be able to see a lot more movement with that. And also the buff to Power Trip just makes it more competitive with Hand of Doom. So I really agree with these changes. I think they're really good. The one change that I slightly don't agree with, but it's not a huge nerf, is the Demon Bolt change. I think it's going to be about a 5 to 10k DPS nerf. Basically what it's doing is it was reducing the damage of Demon Bolt anywhere from 16 to 20%. So that's pretty significant, but Demon Bolt wasn't a huge portion of your damage anyways, and it's really you have to sit there and channel single target to get the maximum effect out of it anyhow. It's only when you're sitting there and channeling it single target at the highest potential where this nerf really cuts into the damage. It won't cut in too much on the low end. So what I mean by that is, imagine if there's a fight with a lot of movement and you can have less demons out, the change isn't affecting it as much because it's only 2% multiplied by a less number of minions. If it's on like a fight where you're really standing still, really pumping out those minions, the change affects it way more because you have more minions out. That 2% gets multiplied more and more times. So basically, what they're saying was Demo's already kind of overperforming single target, and we just want to tone them down very, very slightly. And I think this is a good way to do it. It doesn't change the playstyle or anything like that. It just makes it so Demon Bolt just hits a little less hard when you have all of those things up. So this was the talent changes that were made. This was Affliction, Destro, and Demo. I think the Affliction changes were really good. I think they made a lot of sense. I think they buffed priority switching, and I think they just made a quality of life talent, Malefic Grasp, there for people who wanted to run that. I think the Destro changes were okay, but they don't make sense because Destro was already crappy at single target, so why would you nerf it even further? And then the Demo changes, whatever. Just buffed a little bit of movement, changed Demon Bolt a little bit. We're not going to see very many significant changes. Obviously, Grimoire of Synergy was nerfed by 5%. This was just to make it more competitive with service, but all your damage basically comes from your minions anyways. It's not really from you, so it's not a huge nerf. So yeah, Demo, still going to be good for single target, still going to be good for most fights. Affliction had some quality of life changes, basically is going to remain the same. Destro, single target nerf, why doesn't really make sense. So those are my opinions on the talent changes for PvE. Now moving on to the PvP talent changes. The first one here is Cremation. Immolate is now an instant cast, and your Incinerate automatically applies Immolate. What this means is basically we're not going to see that build where people are running Wreak Havoc and able to immolate everyone instantly, Shadowburn everyone instantly, and spam Conflagrate. I think it's nice because basically it says, okay, you could run a build like Fire and Brimstone in a battleground and get immolate on everybody and just crush everyone with those dots and things like that. I think that will be really fun. And I don't think it's really fun to just have a Warlock spec where everything revolves around being an instant cast. You instant immolate, instant Shadowburn, pop all your portals, and kill someone with all that damage. I think it's a nice change. I don't think it's a bad thing at all. The next talent change is going to be a new one. It's called Curse of Shadows. Basically what it does is magical damage effects will strike the target an additional time for 50% of their damage as Shadow lasts for 10 seconds. This is going to be a really fun ability to run with like a Shadow Priest or a Subtlety Rogue that has to have those Shadow dots or magical dots even, and basically it just increases the damage that they do for 10 seconds. So it allows Affliction, it allows Shadow Priest to have some sort of burst with their dots rather than them just having passively tick for the same number over and over and over again. So you could get a CC chain on a healer, pop this and do a lot of damage. You could, if you're going for a kill on an FC and an RBG or something like that, you could pop this on the FC, get all these UAs out there ticking just super, super crazy hard, and you could crush someone over those 10 seconds. It's going to be really good when the healer can't dispel it, things like that. I think it's going to be a really, really fun ability to run. I think it's a good ability. I think abilities like this are really, really nice in PvP. So I'm 100% for it. Death's Embrace. Corruption, Unstable, Affliction, and Agony deal an additional 100% damage at targets that are below 30% health. I think this is going to be a really good ability if you're running a comp like RLS, if you're running a comp like WLS, because the damage that it's going to do is going to be just like crazy when the target gets below 30% health, and when you're running a comp like WLS or RLS, targets should be constantly getting below 30% health because you have that rogue, you have that warrior on your team that's pumping out that single target damage, and it's just going to really help finishing off the target. However, when running a comp like Shadowplay or like DK Warlock, one where you're really rotting the enemy team, I don't think this will have as much of a value because all the targets are going to be like constantly low during the game, and when everyone is already below 30%, you've pretty much won the game at that point. So I think this talent might lose some value. I might be completely wrong on that. It might be totally insane for running a comp like that. So when everyone gets to 30% or below, they're all just going to die. So it might be good in that sense, but I think it's more of a win more talent for those kind of specs. So I like it. I think it's good. I think it's cool. I really like that dots buffed because basically they tickle all the time. So having specific situations where you're able to buff their damage is really, really cool. Imagine you combine this with something else. It'd be really, really fun to run. So I think this is a nice change. I think it's a really, really cool ability. The next change is going to be Essence Drain, and what it does is whenever you use Drain Soul, the damage that the target deals is reduced by 5%, stacking up to 5 times. I think this change was really, really necessary because I think especially for Affliction locks, it was way, 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 way too powerful. 50% damage reduction is a lot, and to have 100% uptime on that is just way, way, way too much. It wasn't really used in 3v3. It was mostly used in 1v1s and 2v2 arena. And I think 25% is a nice medium. I don't think it's too much. I don't think it's too little. I think Blizzard did a good job nerfing this talent and recognizing that it was OP, but it's still a fun ability to use. I think maybe a slightly cooler change would be like have the target's damage reduced by 6%, every time that it ticks, stacking up to 5 times, undispellable, but you can't refresh it. So basically what that means is you could stack it up to 30% damage reduction, it would last for 10 seconds, and then it would fall off, and you'd have to stack it up again, and it couldn't be dispellable. I think this would be kind of like a cooler way of doing it, so you would have that consistent, damage reduction on yourself. But at the same time, I think this iteration is fine. I think it's a very balanced spec, or balanced talent. I think people will still play it in 2v2 and 1v1 situations. The next change is going to be Fell Fissure, and it's going to be that Chaos Bolt creates a 5-yard range eruption of Fellfire onto the target, and basically what the change that they made is it's going to slow the target instead of dealing shadow damage. And I think that's very, very significant because slowing the target while it's in the Fell Fissure is what you want. You want the target in the Fell Fissure as long as possible because you want the target not to receive healing. You don't really care about the damage that it deals. You care more that the target isn't really receiving a lot of healing for the amount of time that it's up. So I really, really like this change. I really, really think that it's a good thing that it now slows the target because it's going to be inside that Fell Fissure for longer. Right now, people are just running out of it. It's not really an issue if they're able to stay on it even for a few seconds longer. It's going to be way more impactful. So I like this change. I think it's good. I think it's, better than the current iteration. I think it makes it slightly more competitive. Sure. The next change is to Firestone. It restores 2 soul shards and increases your spell critical strike chance by 100% for 7 seconds. The cooldown on this ability basically was just reduced by 20 seconds, so it just makes it better compared to the flat Chaos Bolt damage increase than it was previously. And yeah, I would run it. I really like Firestone. I think it's a really cool ability. I really like the generation of soul shards followed by being able to do a burst window on a cooldown. I think that's really fun. I think it's really cool that you can pop Firestone, press some flags, shove out some huge chaos bolts, things like that. Just really, really fun ability. I really enjoy it. I think the buff on it was definitely needed, and I think that it was a good way of doing it by reducing the cooldown and not like increasing the duration or something like that. Basically a constant soul shard generator, and you're going to be able to do burst. Really good. I think that Rotten Decay was slightly nerfed. It's kind of hard to tell based on what it says, but basically Drain Life is going to be refreshing your dots for 1 second every single time that it ticks. I think it's still really good. I think it's going to be still a really good talent to use in every situation where you would be running it, run it before. I think it's still going to be really good in 2v2 and 1v1 because you're able to get much higher uptime on your UAs and your corruptions and agonies. So yeah, not too much of a change on this guy. Still going to be really good. Still going to refresh your dots if you're channeling that ability. Yeah, awesome. I like Rotten Decay. I think it's really fun. The last talent that is currently up is Soul Shatter, and this is going to be a really good talent for RBGs. It's going to be okay in Arena, but I do not think it's going to be better than the other talents for Arena. Basically what it does is it consumes all your dots on the nearest 5 enemies and deals 10% of their total health in shadow damage, and then for each target that you hit with this Soul Shatter ability, it grants you 10% spell haste for 8 seconds, stacks up to 5 times. I don't know how I feel about this. In 3v3 Arena, it's going to be like 30% haste, which isn't very much for 8 seconds. That kind of sucks, right? Like, that's not very fun. I'm not sure if the duration stacks. If the duration stacks, sure, this would actually be kind of worth it. But since I don't think the duration will stack, I just think the spell haste will stack. I don't think it'll be that great. I think in RBGs it will be crazy good. Dealing all that damage, just for applying 1 dot on somebody is going to be crazy. And yeah, I think it'll be super fun to run in RBGs, and I think it'll be good to run in maybe 3v3 Arena, but I think the other talents will outweigh this one. But whatever, sure, it'll be fun to do in Battlegrounds, and that's what half of PvP is. So that's my take on the 7.1.5 build. I hope you guys like it. Let me know what you guys think about the 7.1.5 build, and let me know if I missed anything as well. So thanks for watching. This video is the second one that I'm making. I'm re-uploading this because I think the audio on the first one was really, really poor, and I just wanted to try to improve that. And maybe it's better, maybe it's not. I can't really control what mic I have, but thanks for watching, guys.